All right. First things first, you had a short answer question to it, and it had to be in pen. Had to be in pen. It's good to have a short answer question. And I personally like these because you can pick where you're going to short ID. I think that, so I like that idea. Oh, before we get to that, I thought about getting a very difficult test ready for you guys, 3 or 4 day test. But I, of course, knew, as I'm sure all of you knew, yeah, I was going to take 3 or 4 days. Well, you might in 2 weeks. You might in 2 weeks. But the forces of good, the forces of justice prevailed over evil. And so Kansas City is in the Super Bowl. Yes, the forces of justice have prevailed. And I know all of you cared a lot because you're good people and honorable, right? And by the way, if you don't follow football, and the NFL, good for you. I'm very jealous. It could be easier if I didn't follow, but now I have to. All right. But the Super Bowl is in 2 weeks, so we might still have that 5-day test. And I know what you're thinking, that's totally unfair, and I agree. So get out there and work, people. Okay, so let's talk very quickly about this question. And the thing about it was that you got to pick what you're doing. Who answered number 1? Who answered number 2? I thought number 2 was actually a pretty good one also. Who answered number 3? No one answered number 3 in here? Really? That kind of surprises me too. I think 1 and 2 were very good. 3's okay. I didn't say, did you do 4? You're fine. You're fine. It's the same kind of question. Don't worry. I just didn't give you that option. Anybody else do number 4? It's okay. It's still the same thing. It's just enough. I could have given that one as an example. So don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. The big thing, I just want to practice how they do this. And so take that point of view, some immigration, some bad, some good. But so we can have anything from, you want to put down, so the cartoon, basically it's anti most immigrants, but there are some good ones, you know, so it's kind of who's going to go and who's not. They would put down for number 2, for jobs being taken away. Was that one that people use? Jobs. How about people use nativism? How about fear of other religions or cultures or things like that? Anybody use that? How about, did anyone use the kind of the height of racism and therefore, you know, the Klan and things like that coming back? Anyone use that for the Klan? Very good. How about, now this one's a little bit harder. The Chinese Exclusion Act is probably the most obvious one. Did anyone, and there's one in this book, so you could allow to look back. I didn't tell you this one, but it was I jotted it down. I jotted it on my list, make sure I don't miss anything. There's a contract labor law about immigration, about temporary workers, and what's the other one? Yeah, it was a tax on that. If you would use the Immigration Act on that one, or a literacy test, both of those are 4 ones you could have used. And those are really good ones. For number 2, what was the cause of the rapid, and I mean rapid? Who did number 2 and didn't put down overcrowding? That's what I would have put down right away. Overcrowding was the biggest issue. How about pollution or lack of services? Anybody use that one? Say it again. Industrialization, that would work too. Very good. How about political machines and corruption? Okay, we'll get to that one more. That was also in the book. How about for number C, for reform methods? Do anyone use education? New schools? How about like Jane Addams, the settlement house movement? That was a good one there. Yeah, increased housing, political reforms, building zoning. These are good ones. You get right what you know, give an example, relate it back. We will do more of these. Let's go ahead and rip them out very carefully and hand them up. All right, now. Yeah. Next time I rip it up and you have to read the whole thing, right? You got to do it pen, everybody. I make the rule. Next time I get pencil, it's tossed. And I don't want to toss them, so don't put me in that position. So, if you did not, you want to say it again? Huh? You have to get to tomorrow for class. All right, next. We are going to do boom bust cycle, so let's get to it. I'm so excited. I'm really excited for the thing from another world.
This is one that was passed up. Oh my god!
I made the mistake of doing it in my notes.
You ready for the thing?
That's like the worst spot.
Lisa's in pen. All right. So where do we finish here? Where do we finish? Did we get to? Oh, we got to anarchist. We're talking about the left-right spectrum.
We just got to.
Oh, good. Okay. Oh, I showed you that picture. Did we get to this? We talked about Saturn eating his children. Okay. So that's always the thing about the left wing. The right wing too. They so bitterly fight each other. In fact, well, you're not going to find anybody who's more anti-communist than a socialist, a moderate socialist, and vice versa. The only thing about German history, wow, did they fight? That helped lead to the Nazis, who were rapidly anti-socialists. And that was their whole organizing principle, was anti-socialism. Oh, what was the philosophy that said hierarchies are natural? Yeah, social Darwinism. Not Darwinism, but social Darwinism. How did Darwin feel about them? Yeah, despised it. He was a moderate socialist. And, oh, who was the guy? Okay, Spencer's the first one to credit survival of the fittest, but who was the American philosopher? Say it again. You're so close.
Spencer.
Spencer was the one who came up with survival of the fittest. Who came up with, who's the American? Who wrote Folkways? Yeah, Sumner. Sherman, I know. And that's one thing I do have sympathy. There's a lot of names. You really have to work on connecting them to not get them confused. So, let's get to anarchists then. Oh, what's the furthest right political economic ideology? Fascism. What's the furthest left?
Communist.
Anarchist, yeah. Most people are kind of in the middle. A little, is liberal more right or left? Left, okay. And like I said, people misuse those terms all the time. And, you know, probably all of us have elements of both. Probably more than others, more one way or the other. If you're more social Darwinistic, are you right or left? Yeah, the more social Darwinistic you are, the more right. That's just a sure test. Okay, so anarchists. Anarchists are socialists. They believe in the tenets of socialism. They believe in a classless society. So they're rabidly anti-social Darwinism. But what makes them so much different is two big things. First off, any hierarchy to them is a class. And so they don't even want hierarchies in amongst anarchists. The idea being, if we have a hierarchy, boom, they'll immediately take over and take charge. So they didn't trust Marx's idea of the proletariat, a dictatorship of the proletariat. So they all wanted individual action. Individual action. They do not want anarchy. They want to blow up the existing order. Blow it up and replace it with this idea that there will be no hierarchies and therefore everybody will be equal. So that was their idea of anarchy, of having no like tiny group of people running everything. And once again, how do you achieve that? I think you might see some issues with that. But Emma Goldman, who was a Russian, she was from Russia, she immigrated to the United States, she was a naturalized citizen, would be one of the leaders who believed in a peaceful revolution. And she would become quite famous. But then in the Red Scare after World War I, she would be exiled and sent to now the Soviet Union, or I guess then it was the Soviet Union. But many thought, no, we have to blow it up. We have to show how unstable this system is. And they called it propaganda of the revolutionary terrorism, which also gave fuel to the nativists, who said, you invite all these foreigners in and they're a bunch of terrorists. And that is still used today. And so they thought revolutionary terrorism to destroy the old order. And so that discredited, obviously, peaceful anarchists like Emma Goldman. And here's a cartoon of this. And they showed a lot of cartoonish Bob, the brown with the fuse, trying to come in. And come in, you oppress, and who's coming in? European anarchists. So this fit in with that nativist trend, anarchists. And not that there are that many, but they did spectacular acts of terrorism all over basically the industrialized world, which of course is going to discredit everybody who agreed in the tenets they believed in. So this is the attack on the French Parliament, an opera house in Madrid, the idea of getting the upper class. They blew the Tsar, Alexander II of Russia, they blew him in half, an anarchist bomb. And so he's blown in half and then waist down, and he stayed alive for nearly 8 hours with his basically here down, blown off. I don't know how. Here is the assassination of the Chancellor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Oh, this is a little assassination by an anarchist. 1901, the President of the United States was assassinated by an anarchist. Not Garfield, McKinley. And we'll come back to McKinley, but the point is there were spectacular assassinations and attacks and bombings. All through 1880s, all the way up through 1914. And the thought was they'll show that these individual acts, for the most part, will show that society cannot protect its people, is unstable, and the thought was it would blow it up. It had the exact opposite reaction. People looked at this and wanted security, and almost immediately, anybody involved in this is going to be tagged with not just anarchists, but bomb-throwing anarchists. Bomb-throwing anarchists. And that was a way to discredit anybody who wanted things that socialists might have favored. Like, for example, 8-hour workday, or equal rights for men and women, or no discrimination based upon color of skin. They're going to be dubbed bomb-throwing anarchists. Can't you say anarchists? You got to add the bomb-throwing part. And there's going to be so many cartoons of anarchists, usually with a beard, and they try to make them look sinister, evil, with a cartoonish bomb. And this is going to be used all over the world by those who favor that more capitalist, so therefore a little bit more right, or in the center. It's very complex. And this would be used to discredit unions. Unions want 8-hour workday, workers' comp, no child labor. So there are a bunch of bomb-throwing anarchists. Civil rights, those who want equal rights for all people regardless of color of skin, bomb-throwing anarchists. Women's rights, bomb-throwing anarchists. And it usually led to a lot of divide within labor unions. But after World War I and after the Russian Revolution in 1917, the United States had its first real anti-communist hysteria called the Red Scare. And after that, the enemy went from being bomb-throwing anarchists to communists or Bolsheviks. Here's another one. Put them and keep them out. So here's Lady Justice, and she's stopping this anarchist coming from overseas with the cartoonish bomb. And so labor unions would say, we want better working conditions. Bomb-throwing anarchists. And it was quite effective. So I mentioned this, I think I said this in class before, but we get to a more modern civil rights movement, and those who want equal rights are going to be labeled communists or socialists. And so I'll give you an example. I want to put that in to show how it relates. Here is a pamphlet put out about Martin Luther King at a meeting, and this is actually in a class, but now they say he's in communist training. Complete lie. This was put in billboards all over the South and in certain areas. Remember sundown towns? Also in those. Just to discredit the civil rights movement. And here was a sign opposed to civil rights. This is actually opposed to fair housing in 67 in Chicago. But Martin Luther King, troublemaker and a liar, smash communism. And it was very effective at dividing people, especially during the Cold War. So let's get to real events now. We've laid all these issues out, and now let's get back to what's going on. We got two big panics to talk about. The first one, the Panic of 1873. And the Panic of 1873, so we went through all the factors of the Second Industrial Revolution, these new ideologies. But how will these ideologies play out when real situations? There was a massive speculative bubble based upon gold. There's efforts to corner the gold market by a guy named Jay Gould, speculation in new stocks, railroads, and of course, there's always seems to be a real estate bubble. The bubble burst. That's why I put the line through. But there's also a severe economic problem. I didn't mean to put railroads twice. Overproduction in railroads. Overproduction. And that meant overproduction in steel and everything else. The thought was railroads will expand so much, so these companies started making pretty risky debts. They couldn't pay back their banks. Banks went under. This is a bank panic right here. And then also one more thing. During the Civil War, they started printing currency called greenbacks. And the thought was this was causing destabilization and banking problems. And in 1873, Congress passed, with support of President Grant, the Coinage Act. And this meant the United States went off the gold standard. So all those old greenbacks became essentially worthless. Farmers will despise this bill, call it the crime of 73, and it would help lead to a new political movement we'll get to in a couple of days. So this gold standard, now, yes, it was based on gold, but this is an economic system based upon the amount of gold and the interest rates for your currency in relation to gold. We're not going to go through all the details of that, but all this in net effect was deflation. Prices fell dramatically. And if prices fell, people can't pay back their debts, and that means banks start to go under. This is going to ripple to all parts of the economy. This was an absolute disaster, as you can see from this pass. You know what it's for. I'm sure. So this turned into, it was a worldwide depression. Every place that had begun the Industrial Revolution. So brand new countries like Germany. I mean, Germany literally was just created, fell apart. The banking, there was a bank panic and runs on banks, not just in the United States, but when in Amsterdam, London, and for example, Japan was just beginning the Industrial Revolution. And it crushed them. This was a shocking disaster. There had been a really bad panic in 1857, then the horrific one in 37, but this was significantly worse. And just in the United States alone, approximately 18,000. You see numbers, no one's exactly sure. They didn't have very good stats, and it's still difficult now. But all these businesses shut their doors. Remember, businesses need credit to survive. They got to borrow money constantly. Overnight, banks begin to shut their doors because people weren't paying back their debts. Banks that survived were scared to loan money. Unemployment, even today, it's hard to tell the exact employment number, but approximately 20%, this is what you see a commonly given figure. And this is really going to hit the North and the Midwest because that's where the most industrialized jobs were. Still between 40 and 45% of the population were farmers, and especially in the South. But this was a crisis. This is a picture of a run on a bank of people, or a protest, I'm sorry, against the mass unemployment that happened overnight. And wages and profits tanked. Remember, wages are decided by the wage system. And so, if the number of unemployed people rises, so there's people looking for jobs, that has downward pressure that gets bigger and bigger every year. And what happened is in 1873, it started. And the banking situation was actually relatively unstable. And then all these bank failures. And then it looked like in 75 things were getting better, and then it actually got worse. The same exact thing happened in the Great Depression. 29, 30 looked horrible. 31, things are getting better. 32 was one of the worst years in American history. It looked like the whole thing was done. And this was worldwide. And so you see this a number of times throughout history. And so this worldwide depression, what happened is companies that survived began to make cutbacks. Banks were afraid to loan money. And companies that were making money, the few that were still making money, like a couple of the railroads, what were they doing to their wages? Were they raising them or lowering them? They were lowering them. Why? Yeah. So you can, or just tell your workers basically, take a pay cut or you're gone. So we have 1,000 people ready to take your one job. Remember, wages have nothing to do with profit, no direct connection. And so the B&O Railroad was actually doing okay. Not the profits they were in 72, but by 76, they're still doing okay. Yet they cut their workers' pay twice, and the workers just took it. And then in 1877, they cut it again. And this would trigger a massive strike. It will be first dubbed the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. And it wasn't really a strike like organizing workers got together in unions. It was more just mass panic and workers terrified that they're going to have to stop this or they'll never survive. It looked like everything was going to fall apart and they won't even, they have a job, but they won't have any money. And it started in Wheeling, West Virginia, right here. So the B&O Railroad kind of goes like this and it branches off like that, right here. And then it basically just followed up and down the tracks where workers refused to work, basically shutting down the cities. So it rippled into Pennsylvania, to Altoona and Pittsburgh. And there in Altoona and Pittsburgh, strikers refused to let trains go by. And other railroads joined them. Pennsylvania sent out the militia, like they always did, to crush the strike and force the workers to take lower wages. Remember, government was basically pro-capital, pro-companies. Yet by 1877, people were terrified. And the militia were made up of the very same kind of people who were scared of their jobs, like the railroad workers. And just like Bacon's rebellion or Shays' rebellion, what did the militia do this time? Yeah, they joined. Another way to look at it is they just refused to fire and said, no, we're fighting the same fight. And once that happened, boom, it went nationwide. Nationwide. And not just railroads, it was thousands of other workers took to the streets. These are workers who felt the system was rigged and they felt cheated all over. Heck, workers took over and ousted the city council of St. Louis and called themselves a commune. And we're going to organize for all the workers. And the first thing we're going to do is rip up people's debts. They even made up a flag for St. Louis. And it was a red flag. Red was the color of revolution, as we know by then. The color of patriots' blood, red. And in the middle, they embroidered a loaf of bread with a sword through it. That should tell you everything you need to know about those workers. They were radical because they were what? Yeah. Hungry people revolt. So, if you want to become an authoritarian dictator, write this down. Provide people with food. Usually kind of like, maybe like food that's not very good for them. You know, like really fatty food, they just sit there. And then give them a screen to watch. And they'll just vegetate, and you can do anything you want. That's a little bit too close to the truth. And when you become the totalitarian dictator, remember me. You got me? All right. This will soon be called the Great Upheaval. And in reality, this was civil war. Not organized, but local governments began to collapse, especially in the northeast and the central areas of the United States. Railroads cut down. President Hayes, remember, he was elected during the Compromise of 1877. He was one who was picked, and the Republicans ended Reconstruction. He looked at this and was being begged by business leaders. And he finally, using the Insurrection Act, that was supposed to be for protecting the right to vote in the South, he sent out federal troops. Now, the U.S. Army is tiny after the war. And most of the troops are spread throughout the frontier. Remember, the Great Sioux War had just ended. But there were troops fresh from Reconstruction in South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana. And many of these troops were freedmen. They had found their best economic opportunity was in the army and not as sharecroppers. And it started out kind of by accident, but they realized how effective it was very quickly, like within hours. And they began to use all the black regiments and call them in to put down the strikes. So they wouldn't join. Use racism to divide. And this should remind you, what's that rebellion in 1676 where they divided the working people? This is just, once again, Bacon's rebellion. I know we have a bunch of rebellions. This is Bacon's. And this would be used for the next 50 years. Use black soldiers to put down white workers. Montana, because Montana's got a very volatile labor history, Montana and Idaho, because of the mines. There'll be 2 regiments of white officers, black soldiers to put down strikes in Montana. They'll be based in Missouri, so they would put down strikes. And so that's how racism would be used to destroy labor unions, which kind of fits in with the tragedy of this time. Also, out of this, after the Great Upheaval, Congress would vote for, the president would sign the creation of the National Guard. So the National Guard would make the militias, the state militias, much better trained, organized. They'll be trained by the United States military. And even though temporarily they'll be, the governor of control, the president of the United States can nationalize them, take over anytime the president wants. In case of emergency, the president has that authority. But now a trained, organized force, not the disorganized militia before, but their #1 task, to put down strikes. So the National Guard will be created for this. And in every town, a big armory will be created that will be double as a fort. You see the old National Guard building, the original one, which is right by the YMCA, and go into that. That is, there's areas of it that were designed to be a fort just in case of internal insurrection. And there's a lot of lead in there, so just breathe it in, enjoy it.
What's the National Guard for now?
So it has the same basic roles. So it is still a reserve force for the United States military that can be nationalized in case of war. And so that's why so many Montana National Guard. And then also the National Guard is also for internal order. It's for order of the state. So it could be for natural emergency and natural disaster, or if there is upheaval, insurrection, strikes. So the governor can do that, or the president can nationalize. So it showed a couple different things, but it showed that labor has a lot of power. They shut down the northern economy. Now they're going to put down, I forgot to say, over 150 people would be killed in the violence when they put this down. Labor has a lot of power if they're organized. It also shows that capital will do anything. And capital then realized their greatest fear. What if workers unify? What if they organize together and be bickering instead of being bickering? Since Bacon's rebellion, they try to be keeping workers bickering. They use color of skin, wealth, position, national origin, all kinds of things keep people bickering, people fighting. And it works. I don't know if you know this, but people bicker all the time now. I don't know if you know that. Realize that? Exactly like that. But it also showed that this new economy is quite volatile. And this is something they really didn't understand. It's always endemic with a market economy, but never more with capitalism. Capitalism because of the importance of those who have the capital and the vast wealth that is created. It's called the business cycle, aka the boom bust cycle. And now we get to draw it. I start today and I'll finish it tomorrow. The business cycle. So watch this. The board. So it's also called the boom bust cycle. And this is endemic in capitalism. Any market economy, but more so here. When I mean endemic, it happens all the time. Meaning, it will happen again. There has been, the closest we've been to a boom in your lifetime is probably now. And there's still flaws in it. I've been through more booms. You lived through two busts. One really long, horrific one. You probably remember when you were 4 or 5 years old, right? You remember those heady days of 2009, 2010, 2011. I don't remember anything. So, let's draw this. It's going to be pretty big. So a boom on top, and it's going to be like a circle down to the bust and then back up to the boom. And it's obviously I'm making you a generic chart. But what signifies a boom? So here are the big things we know about a boom. First off, we know the economy is growing. How do we know that? What's happening to inflation during a boom, aka prices? Are they going up or going down in a boom? They're going up. Now, prices are going up. Prices going up means that companies are looking at, or potential companies, potential people to invest in companies are looking at it and saying, wow, prices are going up, we're all making money, I'm going to invest. It's also encouraging companies to expand. So prices are going up. So what's happening to production? Up. What's happening to profits? Up. What's happening to wages? Up. You get the point here? Here's a biggie. What's happening to credit? Are banks more likely to loan money in a boom or less likely? They are loaning money like mad because we're all making money. Also, what's happening in speculation? Are people thinking, wow, the prices of stocks are going to go up, the prices of land's going up, I better buy now? You're getting a bubble. And then, how about optimism? How do people feel during a boom? We're all gonna get rich. And how long will it last? Every single time there's a boom, you get a significant number of people get caught up in the euphoria, and they believe it's going to go on forever. Now, I know what you're saying. Wait a minute. All they have to do is look at every other bust and they collapse. And people will always say the same thing, but not this time. It's going to go on forever. Bye, bye, bye. Huh? Say it again. Big battle. Oh, one big battle. Oh, yeah, one big battle for the war. I was thinking, I bubbled. I couldn't get out of my bed. Yeah, they always think this is going to happen. Every time. We're all going to get rich. So people are making investments, kind of crazy investment. Banks are loaning money to people that are risky. People that are expanding their company. Production is going up. And one thing to get about this, one constant for all of this, demand is up. People are buying, people are thinking they're going to get rich, they're making investments. Oh, I didn't write this down. What's happening to debt? It's got this weird thing where debt, people are able to pay back their debt better, but then that encourages them to borrow even more money. Debt's going up. So, got all this? So I'm going to leave this right here, but now we're making the big circle. What happens is every time is overproduction tied in with a speculative bubble. We're all going to get rich. People start producing more goods. So, more stores open, companies expand. By the way, where are they getting the money to expand or build new companies? Yeah, they're borrowing money. They're borrowing. Now, what happens to prices once there's overproduction? Prices begin to do what? They begin to drop. And if prices drop, what happens to profits? Yeah, profits will go down a little bit. Now, it's not going to be overnight, all of a sudden prices drop, but all of a sudden it's like, I'm not getting the money I thought I was going to be making. And they can do the math. People are still buying stuff, but I'm not making the money, and I have to make that debt loan repayment next month. What do people do every single time? Every single time this happens. Prices begin to drop, what do they do? Drop what? Okay, if they drop wages, what's going to happen to the workers? They'll go to another job. So that's the problem. The economy's still doing pretty good. Can't really drop wages because of the supply and demand. Not go so far. And remember, they're already kind of decreasing the economy. Maybe they can squeeze a little bit more out. They do this every single time. Every time. Every time. They produce more. They try to get more production, thinking we'll sell more to make up for lower prices. Everybody does this, and what happens to the prices now? They drop even more. Every time. And it's a constant. It always happens. Always, always, always. So what's the next step? Here is where they start making cutbacks, aka layoffs. They start cutting workers, trying to squeeze a little bit more off, maybe cut back production. Always this happens. And this is where you start seeing this happen here. Prices begin to drop, cutoffs, layoffs, and here's the biggie. That means now there are people out of work. There are people out of work. What happens to demand? What happens to demand for goods? Demand begins to drop, and now they're not selling as much, and with the prices dropping, they're really hurting. So what do? Same deal, more cutbacks. Now, if one person cuts back to pay back their debt, that's fine. But what if everyone does it at once? And this is where you get, it happens every time. So, okay, we got to cut back prices. The economy is now shrinking. And then that is when the bubble bursts. The bubble bursts. The spec with the bubble is always the last thing. So in your lifetime, the bubble crashed in October 2008, but the country actually entered a recession a year earlier. The recession began. The economy started shrinking. This step right here, 2007. But people kept on thinking, okay, the economy's getting worse, prices are dropping. Oh, now it's time to buy. It's going to boom again. I know it will boom. The euphoria sticks with them even when the economy's shrinking. Every time. And that is when we finally get into the bust. So, we have the same thing. What's happening? Do we have inflation anymore? What's happening to prices if there's a bust? Oh, they have a name for this. See, it's a curve. They call this the deflationary curve. Anybody want to guess what this is going to be called when it comes this way? No way! I think you can do the math here. Production drops, profits drop, wages drop. Banks don't loan money. I should add, what happens to debt, though? It actually goes up because people can't pay back their debt. Speculation, are people going to be speculating? They're going to be sitting on their money. And what happens to optimism? It went from, we're all going to get rich, to we're all going to die. The world is falling apart. Put a circle around optimism, because this optimism will linger the lack of optimism, the crashing attitude, the hopelessness will go on and on, long after the economy starts getting better. We saw that when the COVID crash. The economy there's lots of flaws in it, but it's really strong right now. And yet the negative feeling appears to be going away, but there's still this feeling the economy is really bad. The economy is, by every measure, really strong right now. We have the lowest unemployment, constant unemployment we've had since Lyndon Johnson was president. Wages are going up faster than inflation. Things are like, wow, there's still flaws, there's still issues, but the hopelessness lingers. When's the bell ring? Here in a sec. All right. So, would you like some homework? Let me ask again, would you like some homework? 863 to 891 for Thursday. I got busy reading about the production of a movie called The Thing from Another World. We're watching that in special topics. And I started reading stories about the production. As you know, my study hour was over. So I didn't write the book. Good movie. So tomorrow, right? No. See you tomorrow. Goodbye. Right when you find work. Eat by your thumbs. Tomorrow, right? Yeah. Goodbye, everybody. Good luck. Okay. Yes, that's the fire alarm. Yeah, just come on. It's okay. Let's, you got a code. Let's give it a second. Now we'll.
Are we supposed to evacuate?
Hilton. Yeah, give me a Yeah, ask me just one of the questions. Yeah, pick 1 through 3. Remember, each one's a short. Question 1 has an A, B, and C. You have to have 3 sentence short ID for A, 3 sentence short ID for B, 3 sentence short ID for C. Okay.
We're still going.
Huh?
I feel like this is,
Yeah.
I feel like this has been going on a while.
Well, look, we gotta go.
Class, are we keeping hold of?
Well, this is the problem. We should have been keeping hold of the third, except for it's gone. So now we gotta open that third.
I'm here.
Oh, it's here. So I should go.
I'm not looking over the other things.
All right, well, let's go outside.
Hey, go to either your third or fourth. Normally we would go to third, but everyone's already gone. So third or fourth, we'll figure it out. Okay. So you both, you can sit with me.
I'm not going all the way upstairs just to leave the building again.
I'm getting my coat on. Let me shut the camera off.
Oh, it's still. Hello, camera. You're still rolling.